So let's get started. So we have a packed program, and as I said, I will do the introduction, and then we'll switch to Reinier Stortelder. Reinier is our in-house optometrist, and you've been with the company now for 6 years, so a long time. Reinier got his bachelor's of optometry at the Applied University of Science in Utrecht, the Netherlands. And he's worked in private practice and fitted a lot of specialty contact lenses before he started working with us. And Reinier is our beacon of knowledge and is also the person responsible for the fitting algorithms. So the connection between the measured surface of the eye and the actual end result. Then we have a short video by Dr. Aaron Wolf and Dr. Sheila Morrison. A video that was recorded at the GSLS earlier this year, but it's specifically about this subject, Ortho-k and the eye surface profiler. And then it's an absolute pleasure to have Dr. Rolando Ortiz here on the podium. Dr. Ortiz got his degree, a doctor's degree in optometry in the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, the School of Optometry, and he now has his practice in North Carolina in the town of Cary. And so he will be sharing some case reports. And last but definitely not least is Dr. Huang. And Huang will also present some case reports here, share her experience with the device, and she got her doctorate of optometry at the New York State College of Optometry, and at the same university she actually also has her master's degree in vision science. And she runs 3 optometry practices in the greater Boston area. And we're absolutely thrilled with all of these speakers here. And so without much further ado, let's get started. Well, to just start. And the eye surface profiler measures the full cornea, limbus to limbus, and a large part of the sclera. And it's particularly the sclera before the introduction of this device on the market. That was a great unknown. We had some notion of the shape, but we actually had no idea of how irregular and asymmetric it is. And you can see the numbers here. Only 6% of the eyes are spheric, and a lot are much more asymmetric than that. And the other thing that we learned is that you cannot extrapolate from the cornea to predict the shape of the sclera well enough to fit a specialty contact lens. And as I said, it measures up to 20 millimeters of the front surface. It does so at a high accuracy with some 500,000 data points, 2 microns for the cornea, 20 microns for, 10 microns for the sclera. And it is a single shot measurement, so it's very fast, and so we'll hopefully see in this session here how easy it is to use. The technology is called Profilometry, and what you need to instill fluorescein onto the tear film. This is essential because we want to measure anything that is exposed open of the eye, and so we then flash blue line pattern of blue light onto the eye, and that then is transformed into a 3D height model of the front shape of the eye. And so on top of that, we started building first lens fit algorithms. Basically, back surface of design of the lens matched with the front surface measured of the eye. And At the moment, we have 41 designs connected, but we are an open platform, we're neutral, and so we're constantly reaching out to labs, and we're always listening out to requests from our users to add more labs and more lenses. So taking a measurement is, you need to lubricate the eye, because in the end we measure fluorescein on the tear film, anything containing hyaluronic acid. You instill fluorescein, as I mentioned. It has to be done in a light-controlled space. And light-controlled can be fairly, you can have some ambient light. We will make some measurements here, which is sufficiently dark. What you don't want is that a light source creates a reflection of the cornea into the camera. So any light source for the patient in front of the patient can lead to trouble, but behind the patient's head should normally be okay. Daylight definitely is a problem. And then you just hit the fire button when it's aligned correctly and you move on. So this is basically what you see in the monitor, and how you see the eyelids are held open, the system is centered, and a very quick process, 2 photos, flash, milliseconds one after the other are taken and are then processed into the 3D high model. And another really nice aspect of this device is what we call the direct connect. So basically it allows you to transport or to transpose all of the lens design that you've created in your session onto the order form of the lab of your choice, and it will push out that order to the lab with the measurement, so that should you have a conversation about the fit, the trained consultant, and we train those consultants, will have the same data that you have, and that in essence. So we're an open platform. We would think particularly on the scleral lenses, all the leading brands are there, and if you see anyone missing, then please let us know, and we'll put our effort in to add them. For Ortho-k at the moment, we are connected to CRT, and but we're in the process of adding more. So watch this space. We will announce more in the near future. And with that, I hand over to Rainier.
Let's get started. So the image that you see on the screen right now is what we do. So we're projecting vertical lines on the eye, and beside of that you see that everything is completely dark. So the only thing that we capture is the fluorescein, so the projection of the vertical lines on the fluorescein. You notice that there is no gap in the data, so also at the apex we do measure the height, and everywhere we have the same density of the data. Here you see the infrared image that we also take behind the 3D map that we create. As you see, it's covering everything. So you can get an image of up to 20 millimeters horizontally as well as vertical. So we do capture the full cornea. We do never extrapolate any data. You may be missing data or get invalid data, so there is no extrapolation. We also never have an issue with the nose, so shadow from the nose or from eyelids. So the only issue that we have is if it's really physical in the way. So we have to open the eyelids, so if you don't open them, we cannot measure below, but they will not give you a shadow, so as long as you open it, you have the data. As already mentioned, split second, and we have the capture. Here I visualize, so in the center you see an image of a procedure device, so that's a fairly good scan for a procedure device. And I've been drawing these two circles, and these circles are representing where we are designing our alignment curve with Ortho-k lenses. So what you see is that you hardly have any data with the alignment curve, so what you're doing to get a good centered Ortho-k lens. Of course, there are also some challenges for us. So we do need fluorescein to get an image. Without fluorescein, there is just no image. We think that using fluorescein is not a big issue because in the whole process of fitting, evaluation, follow-ups of your contact lenses, you do need fluorescein. So if you cannot use it in the beginning, I think contact lenses should not be used. Also, if you really want to capture that vertical 20mm data, you need to work as a team.
Veneer, a question. With the fluorescein, does it have to be a liquid or can it be a strip with the tear?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so the question is, can you do it with a liquid or with a strip? Most important, we need a fair amount of fluorescein, so the more the better. The way how you do it is not that important. I use a strip, so 2 drops on the strip. I let it slide to the tip of the strip. I instill inferior, blink once, and I instill superior. That's good enough, but we also have practitioners using minims, and I believe that here in the United States, minims are not really used for fluorescein drops, but in England they use fluorescein drops, so just a fluorescein drop. What's important to mention here is that it's really nice to use a hyaluronic acid drop because it's slightly thicker, so slightly staying a little longer on the eye. So you have a few seconds more to get your image.
Not tap water.
I think that I don't have the answer to the question about tap water.
Please.
I want to focus on these 3 things because we believe that customization is really important, but we are also doing the computer assistant fitting. So we just allow you with 1 click to come up with a calculation fully customized. Personally, I really like to design lenses myself. So for me, it's really important to work with flowcharts. So therefore, I always try to build a flowchart as well. Talking about flowcharts, this is a study published last year. It's done in Canada. It's, I would say, easy to read and really practical. So what did they do? They have a flowchart. When do you need to do what? What is the procedure that you should describe? So what we're showing today is monotherapy. They have a second flowchart where they say pupil smaller or larger, what is the amount of myopia, what is the amount of astigmatism, and they guide you in a good direction. As you see, I've been highlighting it here. Quite often Ortho-k or Ortho-k with a smaller optical design is the choice. I'm showing this because Dr. Ortiz is using this with his 3 of his cases to show why did I take a certain treatment. When you're designing or fitting lenses, if it's sclerals or Ortho-k, you can do it three ways. Empirically, so you call the lab, you give them the case, the HVID, and they design a lens. You can have fitting sets, and you can do it computer assisted. To explain it or get into detail, I think it's important to go quickly over the options that you have with the CRT design. There are three zones, so you have the base curve. That has not that much to do with the fit of the lens, so how does it center. So I'm not talking too much about the base curve, because this is really how much treatment do you want to create. But this one is important because you're bringing down the base curve, so you're landing on the eye, and you typically do this at about 8 millimeters. And then the last adjustment zone that you have is the alignment curve, or as the CRT is calling it, landing zone angle. This ends at 10 to 11 millimeters. And this is, for me, the most important slide of their fitting guide. What are they showing here? First of all, you see that it is possible to design a toric return zone, so a toric RZD with a spheric LZA. But it's also possible to design a spheric RZD and a toric LZA, or even combine it. If you now go back to what I've been presenting before, you have three options. If you design it just based on the K values, it's always extrapolated. So the RZD and the LZA are connected to the K values. So there is, in that way, no customization for each section individually. Also with fitting sets, you do have a couple of toric options, but it's not endless. So you need fairly large fitting sets, or you need to order a lens. And that's where we believe is customization and computer assisted fitting comes in. So how does it look like in the Eaglet software? We call it first lens fit. You hit on the first lens fit Ortho-k button. This screen comes up. You only have to select the design that you want to use, in this case Paragon CRT. You have to give in the refraction that you want to correct, and you hit calculate. We're always running our calculations in the clouds. This way we can make sure that we always have the latest algorithm, so that even if you're running on older software, you always have the latest updates for the algorithm. And this is what you get. So what you see here, it gives you the base curve, the RZD1 and RZD2, so if it's spheric or toric in the return zone, and it gives you an LZ1 and an LZA2, also giving it spheric or toric. How does it work under the hood? As I already explained, we try to customize as much as possible. So we're calculating each section independently, and we do this based on SEC data. Optical zone for the regular design is 6 millimeters, and then you have the return zone, which lands at 8 millimeters. So the first step that we take is we're collecting data at a port length of 8 millimeters. So in the slightly enlarged screen at the bottom left, I gave him a port length 8, and there I have the sec data that I need. So the mid-sec is the principal meridian for the flat meridian, and the max-sec is the steep meridian. Most interesting here is the difference, 30 microns. Typically you start designing a toric lens when it's 30 microns or more. To design the LZA, you need to look at the edge and not completely at the edge, because there we have the edge lift, but where you want to have it aligned. Let's say in this example 10 millimeters. The algorithm is always adjusting it. So if you're fitting a larger lens, it's taking a larger port length. What is it looking at? Again, the principal meridians, the flat and the steep, and it takes the difference. So what you see here in this example, there is a difference of 60 microns. That means that you will have in the return zone a toricity of about 30 microns, but you make it a little more, so you add about 50, 60 microns in the LZA. As I told in the beginning, I'm really a fan of designing flowcharts, or as we call them, nomograms. So you start with, first of all, is it FDA approved? Then you can check in software at 8 millimeters, is it over 30 microns, you design a toric return zone. Then you need to check it at 10 millimeters. Is it larger than 45? You also design toric alignment zone. You do not have to take these steps, so you can simply click on the first lens fit button and the calculate button. But for me personally, it's good to have an understanding of how the algorithms work. So if you're interested in that, always reach out and we explain how it works. We included CRT as an algorithm about a year ago. Before that, we had to validate how it works. So we comparing this with the CRT calculator that's online. It was showing good correlation. What we noticed is that when you have challenging eye shapes, so eccentricities being very steep, for example, then the algorithm designed, so using sec data, was performing really well, so the outcome was slightly better here. It's important. Basically, garbage in is garbage out. So we focus on, with our training, a lot on the quality of the data. So we have an online program trying to train you as good as possible to get very good data. So let me explain that a bit. Always open the eyelids, always try to get the full cornea. So in the beginning, we always recommend to work as a team, so someone helping you opening the eyelids. Later on, when you get used to the system, you can do it on your own, although working with someone together, it makes it slightly easier. We always recommend to set up the patient and align the patient before that you start to instill fluorescein. So you roughly set it up, you instill fluorescein, and then you want to measure quickly. Just because the fluorescein is washing out. The last step that I'm going to talk about, the follow-up. Also here, we try to make it as easy as possible, so we try to reduce the amount of mouse clicks. How does it work? First of all, you have to set a baseline measurement. We do indicate this with this little 1 that you see, so you have been setting this in the past. You're taking a new scan, you click on First Lens Fit Ortho-k, and you get all the difference maps that you need with your follow-up. So what do you get? An actual difference map, you see it at C, so upper right. You get a power profile, so the amount of correction that you've been creating, bottom left, and you do get the tangential curvature difference map, helping you to adjust the centration of the lens. And here we are reaching the video.
Yep. Yeah, click one more time.
And so we're excited to talk a little bit about the new capabilities for fitting and evaluating Ortho-k lenses with the ESP. So a couple of focus points for me. One of them initially is the precision with initial lens selection. So that's where we started. Number 2 we'll talk about is how empirical design is useful in our practices and how does the ESP provide that for us. And then just a few more training tips, again, to build off of comments from the rest of our panel regarding the importance of excellent data. So I always say junk in equals junk out. I think actually one of my mentors said that to me a long time ago, as is with most professions and most things that we create in this world. The data that goes into designs to make something have to be good so that the result is good. And so that's why we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about training for staff in this presentation too. The ESP is now able to take an accurate measurement of corneal shape. So we can look at curvature, elevation data, and there's 2 ways that we can use this in the clinics. Through software like FitConnect, for example, we can actually use the same pattern and the same flow in the clinic for designing Ortho-k lenses, where we have the data essentially run through an algorithm and we can create a lens that way. It can go straight to the manufacturer. Second way that I use it is just pulling numbers from the instrument the old-fashioned way, and that works just as well. Empirical lens design we've talked a fair bit about, so we'll just kind of move forward. And just knowing, again, the whole story, everybody has their own unique fingerprint, and the data that we collect from ESP allows us to properly evaluate that. Even looking at an Ortho-k lens that I'm thinking about fitting for somebody, do I want a toric landing, or should they be more spherical? The same rules as we apply to the sclera apply to the cornea for our Ortho-k fits, and the ESP is now capable of handling all of that. I just want to take a quick minute to point out the importance of having an option for empirical lens design in myopia control practices. So a lot of us here have multiple modalities in our offices. So not only just sclerals, we do myopia control, we do custom soft, we do cornea GPs. And one thing that I've noticed that's a huge benefit that now the ESP is able to provide for us is that whole empirical design flow. And when it comes to our myopia practices, the patient experience is very, very important. Kids come in and they have only so much energy. The parents there's a lot of time we need to spend discussing things in a myopia control clinic. And so empirical design has become a huge important part of our practice. And the cool thing that we're going to show you is a way that we can do this using the CRT lens in terms of empirical lens design just directly off of the ESP. So we've talked a little bit about, the importance of quality in. Just a couple quick tips for the group, because I have now had some experiences looking at the ESP measurements on younger patients. Some of our scleral lens patients, often it's not as common to fit children, but with Ortho-k, a lot of our population is the opposite. We're looking at fitting more and more children for myopia control. And so some of little things that we've picked up in our office along the way, it's not necessary to numb the eye, but a lot of patients we do. I was talking with Renier last night, I think it was, about how often globally are people numbing the eye. Some do, some don't. Oftentimes it's depends on your patient. And for me, for the kids that we're fitting Ortho-k, I like to, because it just makes the process smoother for them. Occlusion of the fellow eye when we're taking measurements is very helpful to get them to keep their fixation and get the data that we want. And then building off again of Melissa's comments about that real estate. So it's not as important with Ortho-k to get scans out to that 22 millimeters. So don't worry about that in the office. What we need is the cornea, but it's still, we want to aim for the stars. So try to get as much data on the top and bottom of the cornea as possible. And one way you can do that is just looking for the white crescent. So you want to try to position the head so that you're getting the real estate you want. You can do all kinds of tricks in the office. Sometimes put the chin rest a little higher if the eyes are deeper set, and that forces them to kind of tip back, pull the lower lid. It all works out on children. And I thought it would be challenging, to be quite honest, with fluorescein, and it really isn't. It works out just fine, the same as it works for adults. Do you have any issues measuring your Ortho-k kids? I'm just going to pass it over to you for measuring children. How do you find that in your office? Because this is new for kids, right, in this modality?
Yeah, so I would, we've dabbled with not using anesthesia, and then we've kind of gone back to using proparacaine. At first, I tried not to use proparacaine on kids sometimes because I kind of can
keep it natural, right?
Yeah, we can also set you off to a bad start if they get some uncomfort or discomfort from that. And but actually, we're back to it, and it's working just fine. I would 100% agree with your comment about you're not really that concerned about the sclera. With scleral profilometry, we're used to seeing these 20, sometimes 20 plus 24 millimeter scans, and they're really impressive. But when you're trying to measure the sclera, you really want really good scleral data. When you're trying to measure the cornea, you want really good corneal data. So yeah, we pretty much barely get kind of pulled the lids open past the cornea, trying to keep the absolute most pristine tear film evenness. Yeah.
Let's talk about the case that we did.
Well, a perfect segue. It's a dry eye patient that usually has SPK. So this is actually used with permission. This is my actual patient. She's one of our staff, and she is excited to be famous in Vegas today. And she presented as a new patient, myopic, a little bit of astigmatism. Her biggest issue is contact lens dropout. So we talk about ESP use for scleral lens patients, Ortho-k myopia control. We also have other applications outside of myopia control for Ortho-k. So in this case, it's a dry eye case. You can see her refraction there. So not a particularly out of the ordinary Ortho-k fit, although on the left eye, for some, it may be getting, you're getting astigmatism and kind of moderate myopia. So we took measurements. I threw this in here just to show you for the case for completion to include her lid scan. So she's struggled. She suffers, and she can't wear her soft contacts during the day. With the Eaglet, we're now able to utilize it for Ortho-k. And so what you're looking at here is our map of Brooke showing her elevation map. And that's the data that we like to use when designing Ortho-k lenses. I'll just flip through the screens, and then we're going to pass over to Dr. Wolf for a second case and make sure that we do have time for questions, because there might be, if any of you have things that you're wondering about, we'll make sure that we have time for that today as well. But we wanted to walk you through what the software looks like. Here is an example of our corneal elevation map of the same patient. And her baseline map. This is how we use the software to empirically predict and design a CRT Ortho-k lens. So in this field, we can select, in this case, Fitting Paragon CRT. And the software will predict our starting lens, similar to like a slide rule, but it's completely done independently through the Eaglet folks and all the algorithms that they've expanded on over the past 12 plus months, and to create the data that we need for our Ortho-k lens. Now this does connect with Direct Connect that Dr. Wolf had talked about, and to make the order process really smooth, everything's digital, so it speeds things up a lot in the practice. There's a record of everything that you're doing. Things go straight to the manufacturer for the order, if you choose to. And this is the lens on the first lens, so as we can see, this is an absolute beautiful lens. I did not fabricate this. This was Brooke's first lens based on her ESP, and the lens looks so great that I decided to take some artsy photos of it. So Dr. Wolf has a case to share as well, and so I'll pass this over to you at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I think that we're going to start to see the use of profilometry or elevation-based data more in Ortho-k is I think we started, we definitely see that in scleral lenses. A lot of Ortho-k years ago was a little bit more base curve, curvature radius type of terminology. Now we're starting to see a lot of these Ortho-k designs are really switching more to just elevation data. For kids, there's a pretty generous amount of working space to deal with, and that can sometimes be a challenge with certain topographers. A lot of topographers, especially like small cone topographers, will get really, really close to the eye. It can make it a little hard to get good images on like very prominent brow bones, deep set eyes, long eyelashes, things like that. The Eaglet, if you get a chance, definitely go look at it in the exhibit hall. But you got a lot of space there to you yourself or a staff member try to get some better scans. It's also particularly comfortable for kids, maybe sometimes even more so than some of those other devices. What I've found over the Ortho-k fits is that basically because at elevation point, you just reveal central islands a lot better. And central islands are just something that just kind of plagues us as far as Ortho-k fitting sometimes. Topographers tend to extrapolate data, which can sometimes kind of mask central islands. This doesn't do any extrapolation. The Eaglet's just raw real data, so it just kind of highlights those a little bit. And sometimes when you have a vision you're not quite, you're expecting maybe a little bit better, it does a great job. Example of just an Ortho-k fit that's just maybe a little bit off-centered, and sometimes if it's a little bit off-centered and it's going through your pupil axis, you're going to get a little bit more glare, flare, halo, maybe a little light sensitivity. Also, a lot of these devices tend to be kind of bright, so now you're compounding that light sensitivity. The Eaglet actually is taken in the dark and it's kind of like a purple kind of flash. It's actually very gentle, so it works great for those cases. These are just a variety of corneal topography maps I've done. These are all axial maps. You're going to notice, a very prominent kind of dark blue in your higher myope cases. Again, we already talked about that slide. That's just a little mild central island. This is the same. This is just a mild, lower myope case. So you're going to see a little bit less color here, but also you're going to notice that the treatment zone is a little bit bigger. A little bit of a decentered pattern, and then on the bottom, this is more of a toric. Okay, this is an astigmatism case. Okay, so you're going to get that oval shape. These are just examples of tangential maps. Again, this is a normal corneal topographer as well, axial, tangential, refractive maps, corneal elevation, all is going to be provided. Again, a high myope on the left is going to have a smaller treatment zone, more prominent rings, low myope on the right, a little bit larger treatment zone. I'm going to fly through this one pretty quick, but this is basically a typical Ortho-k candidate, kind of a moderate myope, especially for 9 years old, so concerning. So we implemented some myopia management with Ortho-k. She is about a minus 250 on the right eye. At about a month follow-up, these are her comparison maps, or her difference maps. You can see the vision is not quite as good on the right eye. If you look in your power profile map, right there, this is going to show you how much power change you've had. So 2 diopters of power change, that's going to leave us about half a diopter of the refraction. It's a 250. You basically just showing off the precision of the instrument. Very well predicted 2 diopters of change there. Okay. On the left eye, this was about a 2 diopter, about a 175 to 2 diopter myope, and same thing. If you look at the precision of the power profile, predicted it very nicely. Are there any questions?
That was a great case, and thank you for that.
That concludes the first section of this workshop. And as Dr. Morrison and Dr. Wolf asked, are there any questions at this time?
I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Does the device express the E-value of the cornea?
I'll repeat the question. Does the device express the E-value of the cornea? Yes, it does. Yes, it is part of the parameters that are calculated for every measurement of the eye. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, please go ahead.
Currently, for certain type of cornea is extremely irregular. The corneal topographer still doesn't read it right and does not provide the complete detail.
Okay, so I'll try to paraphrase your question. You say, is there for this instrument any cornea that it cannot handle, that is too irregular to measure? Rainier, would you care to comment on that?
I would say no. The only issue that we can have, because we instill fluorescein, if it's really dry, so there is absolutely no tear layer, then we cannot measure it. But extreme keratoconic, post-LASIK, ectasias, it's typically no issue. So extreme dryness, that's all.
So are you saying that if there's a patient who has a cornea nebulae or RK scars of some sort, they will still not be able to capture that, even if you put enough hyaluronic acid drops or fluorescein, you still capture it?
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I will repeat. You were asking about a couple of irregularities. So PRK.
Just corneal.
Yeah, the answer simply is yes. As long as you have the tear layer, yes. What you may see if you have an area where you don't have any tear at all, so beyond that point it may become harder. What is the best way to get a good capture? Give the patient drops, send him back home, and call him in a few days later. So it may happen, yes, but you can solve it with drops.
Would you recommend Celluvisc in a situation like this?
That doesn't really matter. The capture itself, as I said, hyaluronic acid. How you work it up, not really important. That's really up to your evaluation.
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
No. We have Rolando first.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I was gonna answer the question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, please. Come on.
Okay. Okay.
Of course.
So, I do a lot of keratoconus fits, and I have two corneal topographers, and I can't always get them if it's too irregular. I'm like following the arrows for like an hour, and it just won't ever automatically take the corneal topographer. So I usually do this, and it's click, so it just takes it every time you click it. So it always takes the image pretty much. So you can always get an image no matter how irregular it is. So I'm actually fitting a keratoconus patient right now where he came into so I have multiple offices. So so I have two with corneal topographers and one with the Eaglet. And he came to one with the corneal one, and I couldn't get an image, and then I had to reschedule him to come to the office with the Eaglet to fit him into a scleral. So I would say actually I have not had an issue where I couldn't get an image, where with my corneal topographers I have had many keratoconus patients where I just could not get an image, no matter how long it took me to follow all those arrows back and forth. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, then let's move on. Sorry. Oh.
Are you trying to get any data on HBID?
Yes, the instrument measures the vertical as well as the horizontal visual iris diameter. Yeah, absolutely.
Pupil as well?
Pupil as well, exactly. But of course, the alignment is done with infrared light, and so of course the pupil is influenced by that light. Yeah. Okay, very good. Then Dr. Rolando Ortiz, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, guys. I will be sharing with you guys a couple of my experience with the Eaglet over the last year or so. I started fitting mostly scleral lenses, which is really true. If we have an irregular cornea, as long as you have a good tear film spreading on top of the eye surface, you will be able to get a great image. But for example, if you have a Delin that is acting up because the patient has any kind of a pterygium or biguecula, and you have a Delin right there at the limbus, you have to send the patient out, like Rainier said, to just hydrate that Delin and actually bring it back and get it done, so you can get a better, an accurate image. But that's just an example. I will be talking about the Ortho-k cases. In my experience with kids, I thought it was going to be so hard to open their eyelids and let them, stay still, let me take your picture, let me instill the fluorescein. And actually, they let me do everything without any problems. But I would like to tell you that I do use Profilometry. It helps me out keeping them from blinking, and they can stay longer staring at the target, so I can align the machine correctly. So as soon as I'm ready to take the image, I place my hand, I let them blink a couple of times, and then I open wide for them. And as long as you have limbus to limbus showing on Ortho-k, it will work. You'll get a good image, okay? Now, sclerals is a little bit different. You will need somebody to help you out, or their own patient. Their own patient can help you out. So in this case is a 30-year-old female with progressive myopia. My community, you can see the progression of myopia from 2019. Of course, COVID came in, she missed the 2020, and then 2021. So she went whole diopter and 50 on the left in over 2 years. Then in 2022, she came back with -3 and 375. So I explained the options to the parents. I guide myself through the flow charts pretty much, as Rainier said before. I explained the pros and cons between different treatments and how effective is each of the treatment. So we elected Ortho-k for the freedom that it provides. Quality of life, they can play sports, they can do whatever they want without any restrictions. Swimming, for example, no contraindications. They can swim as much as they want. Now, in summary, if you follow each of these charts, it will go into, after you discard any binocular issues, you can go ahead and pretty much Ortho-k is the best option. Or if you follow the other one, which is based on photopic pupillary measurement, it will also recommend, and according to prescription and astigmatism, Ortho-k is the best option. So all the flow charts are indicating this is one of the best cases. Also, in this case, after you take the images, this is what you will get. You will place pretty much the prescription on the system, and it will give you the first lens. Now you can do two things. Like some of you guys maybe have a bigger set in the office, and you can pull the trial and see how it looks like. Maybe make adjustment on the spot, but I have a small trial set. So I calculate the lens, and that will be what the algorithm recommend. That will be my first lens. It's about 90% first fit, and you're done. Now, of course, depending on cornea, depending on toricity, sometimes it will slide, it will move. Maybe the cornea is not responding to the treatment, and you have to actually press more and flat out the base curve. So it depends case to case. So I'll show you this one, how it reacts to the treatment. So after I measured, that was the lens that I ordered, and the patient came back. The patient took the lens after her first fitting. She was supposed to come back a day after and a week after. She kept canceling, so she came over 3 weeks after. But she was 20/20, no complaints. So she was actually first lens and done case pretty much. This is the actual fluorescein patterns and the axial correction, and you can see that we correct pretty much close to a 375 in this example on the OD on the right eye. Left eye, this is very interesting too, because analyzing the data, you can see she was 20/20, no complaints, she was happy. You can see in the graph on the left bottom corner, she has a tiny little central island, but the visual acuity was pretty good. So pretty much I just let it be. Vision was happy, the patient was happy with her vision. This one is also very interesting. I don't know if you guys have a lot of pushback from the parents, and even though you might educate them, we don't see the kids getting thicker glasses. That's when they realize they have to do something. That's very common in my practice, even though I have been offering myopia management from 2019 pretty much on that I started recommending this. 2018 -3, 2019 -4, and 350. 525 and 475. She pretty much elected to go with atropine and ISIN +4. At least I begged the parents to do something because they refused to do Ortho-k back then. So I gave them this option, they didn't accept it. But in 2021, they were looking for, more flexibility in their life, more physical activities. So the glasses were on their way, and she needed the glasses for everything at this point. So I explained the options again. We choose CRT, and the measurements, as long as you align everything and blink, picture or image, and you're done. So again, I follow the chart, calculate my first lens. But this was very interesting. The actual pictures. That was a smaller treatment zone, but she was no complaint at all at that point. I did a little bit of an adjustment on this one. So this was not one. This is the other one, the other guy. This one. Yes. In the other patient, I did change one step. But in this one was also one and done. This case was very, very interesting because he was willing to do it, but as soon as he got the lens on the insertion training process, he started crying. And he couldn't. He just held the lens here and he was crying and crying and crying. It took us 3 visits for him to learn how to insert and remove the lens. But when he came over a week after, he was 20/20. And he was super happy, super excited about it. So this is pretty much the first lens the Eaglet calculated. And after a week, he was 20/20. Now the next patient and last, he's an 18-year-old. He pretty much, his brother, which is 11, was wearing CRTs. And he was motivated because of his night job, pretty much. And his eyes getting dry with his soft contacts. So 3 months took me. He was not responding to the treatment. Even though I flat out the base curve as much as I could, it was improving so slowly that I actually started seeing him every 2 weeks to notice the improvement. And then I was adjusting the lens every 2 weeks instead of every week. So finally, I got him down to 20/20, and the last complaint he had, it was that he was bouncing back too quickly. So by 5 o'clock, he was seeing blurry. So I did one more step, and we fixed it pretty much. We flat the base curve one more time, one step, and that's perfect. That is an actual example that for the vertical and horizontal pupillary diameter that you can get the measurements. And you can actually, if this is slightly up, you can actually drag it and adjust it so you can get it more accurate in case that the patient move or something on the alignment process. These are his examples on the follow-up maps. You can see the correction. In here, we're not treating pretty much myopia at all. It's just refractive. So I'm not looking into that very deep ring around the treatment zone. So pretty much, we got it. That was the last lens that we did, and it was 2020. So now he's happy with his vision. So she will have something very interesting that you will love to hear about. So I'm thrilled about this. So
Hi. First presentation, and I just learned how to use this. Okay, I'm Dr. Ray Huang. I'm based out of Boston. I have 3 practices, one in downtown Boston, one in South Boston, one in Newton. I may be acquiring a 4th, and I am on social media. So I have a blog called preventativeeyecare.com where I blog about preventative eye care, mostly Ortho-k and dry eye prevention. I am also on Instagram and TikTok, and so I have my business one, which is Preventative Eye Care, and my personal one, which I tried to make Nearsighted Life. And I noticed that much more people were watching my personal ones than my business ones, so I'm trying to like switch it now to get more traction. Oh, that's my son. So I fit him in Ortho-k. So he was born with ptosis the year I graduated from SUNY, and he had a -275 SIL induced when he was 3 months old, and they wanted to do surgery, a ptosis frontalis lift, and my mom, who's a renowned ophthalmologist, said no. She was basically, I just saw a study that said, general anesthesia under 3 is bad for brain development. So we didn't do the surgery at 3 months like his ophthalmologist recommended. Instead, she had like the head of the pediatric department of ophthalmology at Boston Medical Center, where she works, come in and tell like whatever ophthalmologist they assigned us that like they were wrong and we're gonna wait till he was older. So I fit him in Ortho-k because, at 3 months old, he was already a -275, which is like outside of most soft contacts already. So he is still a 275, and it was a long haul of patching and Ortho-k and VT. I even tried atropine. It was very difficult, and to keep his left eye, the eye with the ptosis, from becoming amblyopic. So he is 2025, which is really exciting because it took a long time to get there. It was like 2060, 2050, 2040, 30. So now he's actually fairly stable, and he had the ptosis surgery actually last year.
Hi, I am Asher. I'm going to be putting this hard Ortho-k lens in the eye that I've had a ptosis on since I was born. I have to wear this so I don't turn blind. This is how fast I can do it. Done.
So yes, I do a lot of Ortho-k on kids. Got a lot of experimentation practice on my own son. And not only that, but I fit myself into Ortho-k in school at SUNY, class of 2013. And I basically have spent the last 10 years trying to fit myself into Ortho-k. And so my optometrist growing up was Dr. Tom Freddo, who's like also pretty like, he made a blind woman see, and they wrote about him in the Boston Globe, so he's like, you know, very well known. He was like the president of the University of Waterloo. He's like a family friend. He's friends with my mom. He fit me in a spherical RX, even though I have a ton of astigmatism. So that's my Eaglet. And if you notice, if you remember what Ramir said about the cord length, where you measure, so that's the RZD cord length, so it's like 6, 8, 10. And then you look at the difference, and the difference, if it's over 30 microns, you want to do toric. So mine is like 100 microns. So very toric. And so the first lens, so I originally put myself in Paragon CRT because that was the only one I think at school that we learned. And then I've done like GOVs, I had a Euclid phase, so I have over 40 pairs of lenses in a cabinet in my bathroom. And I brought 5 of them today, and I'm going to put them on, and you guys are going to look at them. So yes, 10 years trying to design the perfect Ortho-k lens for myself. So I designed a scleral Ortho-k because it is so comfortable when the edges sit on the sclera as opposed to cornea. So I tried 5 pairs. So the first pair was really bad because I sent a spherical RX, but I'm really toric, and so the spherical lens was really blurry. The second pair, they increased the peripheral toricity. So that's what I learned a lot from kind of doing the Eaglet, is that it's not based on like the central K, it's based on like peripheral data. That is actually more accurate than just getting, because I do have 2 corneal tomographers, and you know, I think it is like more one and done when you have that peripheral data. So I like experimenting with the Eaglet the best because it gives me the most data. It's like 500,000 data points. Even with the 500,000 data points, it still took 5 pairs before. Okay, so the issue was, okay, so my left eye is super clear, but my right eye is a little bit myopic. So that's the second pair, and then so I designed a new one for my right eye that was better for distance, but then my computer was blurry, which didn't make sense because I don't think I'm presbyopic yet. And then I lessened the distance in my right eye, so that was like the 4th pair. And then I gave up and just went back to the 2nd pair. And then I designed a multifocal scleral Ortho-k for myself. And that's the one I wear now, and I have them, and I can show them to you on my eyes. So that's really long, sorry. Okay. Scleral Ortho-k. So the edges sit on the sclera, so it's like HBID plus 0.8. So I have tried from 12.9 all the way to 13.1. The 13.1 was too big, and like there was too much volume of the cornea, so it was not as effective. Adults love it, so a bunch of the parents of my Ortho-k kids asked me to do them, and so I didn't have as much success with corneal lenses because they moved around too much, and then like the distance and reading portions were constantly in different spots, and adults just tend to prefer the sclerals because they're huge, there's no decentration really, like you don't have to worry about frowning face or happy face. It's 13 diopters, 13 millimeters, it doesn't really move around. And it's easy, so it's like 2 clicks. You know, you click to take the scan, and then you click direct connect, and then you get the lens. So it's pretty easy. Not a lot of, troubleshooting needed. Usually it's just one and done, because it's 500,000 data points plugged into an algorithm that's translated into a lens that gets mailed to you. Scleral Ortho-k multifocal is something that I am perfecting before I become presbyopic. Decreased optic zone helps. Centration is really important, because it's like your brain learns where distance and reading is, so you don't want it to like change places right all the time. You want it to be in the same spot, so your brain can find distance and reading. I do really like it because myopic presbyopes are the worst. They're the hardest to fit. They don't like their progressives because they have to look up and down. They don't like soft multifocals because they can never read. It always takes like many visits, many lenses. And they always complain. So they're always like, nothing is as good as my natural eyesight without glasses or contacts. What's wrong with you where you can't just match my natural nearsightedness? So then I, gave them Ortho-k as an option to like everybody. So I kind of flatten the center of their eye for distance, and I give them the reading in the return zone, and they really like it. It's almost like, and I think they also get like a ring of their natural nearsightedness. So it's like, I get, patient walks in, I do the ESP. Usually I reach for a Paragon first, because I have like 100 lens fit set and a 40 lens fit set and another 40 lens fit set and maybe 11 diameter. So I've got a lot of trial lenses. Okay, yeah, I think that's later. So yes, usually I just fit them the day I see them, because it's faster with a fitting set, even though I know empirical is better and more accurate to do like the custom made one. But I like my Paragon fitting set. It's just easy. I like putting lenses on and looking at them and then switching them out. But with the Paragon fitting set, usually it's like 3 strikes and then I order the Scleral. so easy, low-hanging fruit, like, -1, -2s are pretty easy with Paragons, but I never say no. So, the 875, okay, I'll try it. 450 still, okay, we'll see, no promises, but I'll try. Presbyopes, I like experimenting with just, outside FDA guidelines. So I'm an off-label kind of person. It works because, so originally I had a fixed fee for myopia management, but then when I started fitting presbyopes, I started charging per visit and per lens, because a lot of the presbyopic patients wanted multiple lenses. So they got like their distance lenses, and then if they want to read, they want like another lens to decrease, to be a little myopic. And they were paying, so I charged them per lens per visit, and it was also nice because, those multifocal fits, they come back like 100 times, but if they're paying per visit per lens, they don't bug you as much because they know they have to pay for it every time you give them a new lens. So it's worth it because you get, it's not like normal soft contact lens fit where they pay you like one fee, and then those soft multifocals will come in like 20 times and you just got that one fee. For Ortho-k, I charge them every time I have to give them a new lens. So I worked with AccuLens, so they offered me lenses to fit them on my patients, and so that's what I use to kind of play around and experiment with in terms of the Scleral Ortho-ks. The lenses is still clinical investigation stage. Aculen is actually seeking sites for an IRB study. So, you know, if anybody wants to use the lens and test them out, maybe write your name on a piece of paper. Should I pass it on paper? Or maybe just talk to Claire, and Claire can get your information, and I'll send it to them, and they can contact you. I think they're looking for 5 sites for the study, so you know, you can get some lenses for the length of the study and try them out on whoever you want. So case 1, 43-year-old female. So I fit her 2 daughters in Ortho-k, and she was like, my daughters love it, I want you to do me. So she's a 650 with a 150 sill in her right, and left 575, 175 axis, 165 with a 1 add. So definitely outside of FDA, off-label, definitely the presbyopia and the over -6 are kind of like, you know, hints that I probably won't be able to get it with the Paragon, but I had the fitting set, so I just grabbed the lens. Oh, there's this side. So I guess with the multifocal, yes, you have to pay attention to pupil, sag theta, manifest refraction. Okay, yeah, so back to the case. So I took the scan, and I grabbed from my fitting set 9.6, 9.8. I think Paragon maxes out at like 10. So I tried it. A week later, she was complaining it was moving around too much because it's a small lens and adults have big eyes. So I tightened it a little bit, but I could only get her down to like a 350. And then in 3 weeks she was still like a 3. So I was like, okay, I gotta just do the Scleral Ortho-k. So then I took the Eaglet. Well, actually, I sent in the original Eaglet scan to Aculens, and you know, so Steve Cogger is a genius, and we worked together we collaborated on designing the lens. So the minute she put it on, the comfort was like way better. She loved it. Less movement, obviously. It's 12.6 diameters, so not much room for movement. So 1 week after, it was dispensed. So her right eye was still a -3, and her left eye was down to 0.75. So of course I retook it, and then, you know, texted Steve back and forth a million times, and he sent me those. And then 1 week later, she was plus 150 in the right and plus 50 in the left, so I probably should have waited a few weeks before I ordered the new lens, but she's happy, so I'm just gonna leave it because happiness is my stopping point. So the study, the New Vision Scleral, I think is what they're calling it, is designed by Aculens, optic zone 5.8, SAG 2.3. Oh yeah, these are the study things. So they wanted me to do the first follow-up after the first night to evaluate those things, and then the second follow-up after 10 days, and then normally I follow like a month, 3 months. Although adults, I feel like sometimes they like don't want to come back that often, so I just let them come back a bit later. This is the post Ortho-k for that -650. Basically, if you look at her optic zone, it's really big. So when I do like the Paragon lens, the optic zone is much smaller than that. And you can see, I'll put on one of my, before I switched to the Scleral multifocal Ortho-k, I was wearing just the Scleral Ortho-k, and you can see from the fluorescein pattern how big that optic zone is. But yeah, it's a real, sorry, how big the treatment zone is, it's really big. And then this is the second lens. Okay, so second case, 22-year-old male comes in with a 475, so yeah, 250, 475, and 275, 450, so really high still. So I'm right next to Newton Wellesley Hospital, which is like a big hospital with a lot of ophthalmologists, and they don't do contacts or something, so they all send them to me. So I get it like from, like get a fax and then they come in. So he came in, it was just so funny because when they come in, he came in with like 10 different RXs from like all these different ophthalmologists, and his SIL, I think one of them said he had like a -7 SIL. It was like all of the SIL values were higher than 475. It was like 7, 5, 6. So that's my refraction, and that was like, I still found that. His SIL was found to be much higher by the ophthalmologist, and of course, with that SIL, I mean, I think the glasses that were prescribed to him had like a -7 SIL, and he hated them. This is his Eaglet scan, so you can see the difference of the the cord length difference in the RC. So is 100 microns, which is greater than 30 microns, so definitely very toric. Oh yeah, sorry, I was trying to translate difference min sag minus max sag. Yeah, so that's what that means, like the cord of the 8, you take like the difference between the values at those points, and the difference value above a 30 micron is toric, so that's very toric. And then after the Paragon lens, it was still a 157. So I got him from 450 to 150, and then I was like, okay, let's try the Scleral Ortho-k, and these are the parameters. And after 1 week, SIL is gone. And then 1 month, SIL was still gone. So it was the highest SIL that I've ever kind of been able to correct with Ortho-k, and so I think the Scleral Ortho-k is more effective because it's bigger, and because of the Eaglet 5.5 million data points.